Welcome back to the Silent Watch Stories. The last thing Nurse Sophia Reyes expected on a cold December night in San Antonio, Texas, was to die on a sidewalk for a man she had never met. But that is exactly what almost happened. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of night where the wind off the highway cuts right through you and the streets empty out fast. Sophia had just finished a 14-hour shift at Brooke Army Medical Center. Not her first 14-hour shift that week, not even her second. She was running on cold coffee and muscle memory, her dark hair still pinned back from work, her navy scrubs carrying the particular smell of antiseptic and exhaustion that she had long since stopped noticing. She was 2 blocks from her car. She had her keys between her fingers the way her father had taught her. Always be ready, mija. The world does not always warn you. Her father, Staff Sergeant Roberto Reyes, 3rd Infantry Division, killed by an IED outside Fallujah when Sophia was 17 years old. She still heard his voice every single day. She heard it now. Don't look at your phone, look at the street. She looked up, and on the corner of East Commerce Street, beneath a broken street lamp that buzzed and flickered like it couldn't decide whether to stay on, she saw them. An old man, seated on the steps of a closed pawn shop, a large German shepherd pressed close against his leg, and circling him, slowly, deliberately, the way predators circle when they have already decided, 2 men. One of them had something in his hand that caught the half-second of light when the lamp flickered. A knife. Sophia Reyes had seen knives before. She had packed wounds made by knives in combat zones and in emergency rooms and in the back of Humvees on roads that had no names. She knew exactly what a knife could do to a human body. She also knew exactly what she was going to do next. She walked toward them. Sophia Reyes was 33 years old, and she had never once in her life taken the easy road. She had grown up in El Paso, the oldest of 4 children, in a house where money was always tight and pride was always present. Her mother cleaned offices at night. Her father served. From the time Sophia could remember, she understood that the Reyes family did not complain. They moved. They worked. They showed up. When her father died in Fallujah, Sophia was 17 and already accepted to nursing school on a partial scholarship. She deferred for 1 year. Not to grieve, but to hold her mother together, to get her brother Marcus through his junior year, to keep the lights on while her mother found a second job. Then she went. She graduated top of her class. She joined the Army Nurse Corps at 22, deployed to Afghanistan at 24. She had worked trauma tents in Kandahar, where the dust never settled and the helicopters never stopped coming. She had held pressure on wounds that no textbook had prepared her for. She had spoken the last words heard by 3 soldiers, whose names she kept written in small letters on the inside cover of her journal. Corporal James Whitfield, PFC Andre Davis, Sergeant Lisa Park. 3 people she could not save. 3 people she carried everywhere she went. She left the Army at 29, came home to San Antonio because it was close to El Paso and her mother was getting older. And the city had Brooke Army Medical Center, where she could keep serving the veterans she understood better than anyone. She worked the trauma floor. She worked it hard. She rarely took vacations. She showed up early and stayed late, and when younger nurses asked her how she stayed calm in impossible situations, she always said the same thing. Because falling apart is a luxury, and I can't afford it. She had her father's jaw, his stubbornness, his absolute inability to walk away from someone who needed help. That last part was about to cost her everything. The old man on the steps was named Walter Gaines. He was 71 years old, a Marine, 2 tours in Vietnam, 1 in the Gulf. He had the body of a man who had once been powerfully built, and the eyes of a man who had seen things that never fully left. His hair was white and close cropped out of habit. His hands, resting on his knees, were still the hands of someone who knew how to be useful. His wife Margaret had died 2 years ago, pancreatic cancer. 6 months from the first symptom to the last breath. Walter had been present for every single one of those days, and he would have stayed for 600 more if God had allowed it. He lived alone now, in a rented house on Hackberry Street. His daughter called on Sundays. His son-in-law had offered twice to move him somewhere more comfortable, and Walter had declined twice, politely, but with finality. He was not a man who needed rescuing, except tonight. At his side sat Duke, a 9-year-old German shepherd, retired from the 3rd Military Police Battalion at Fort Sam Houston. Duke had served 6 years detecting explosives in Iraq and Afghanistan. He had a thin scar running from his left ear to his jaw from a fragment wound outside Helmand province. He had been retired with honors and placed with Walter through a program that both of them had benefited from enormously. Duke had saved Walter's life in ways that had nothing to do with combat, had pulled him back from the worst nights, the darkest hours, simply by being present and warm and absolutely certain that Walter was worth staying beside. They went everywhere together. Tonight, Walter had come out because he could not sleep. Margaret's birthday would have been tomorrow. He had bought flowers for her grave and left them in a bucket of water in the kitchen, and then found he could not be in the same room as them. So he and Duke had come outside, and Marcus Vega had found them. Marcus Vega was not a man who made mistakes about people. He was 29 years old, lean and cold-eyed, with a scar across his left knuckle from a fight he had won decisively at 17. He ran with a crew that operated in 3 neighborhoods on the east side of San Antonio. Not a gang in the way movies showed gangs, but something quieter and more methodical. They moved stolen goods. They collected debts. They had a very clear internal rule: do not leave witnesses. His associate that night was a man named Dre, shorter, heavier, quick to follow. Dre did what Marcus said because Marcus had never been wrong about a situation. Marcus had spotted Walter Gaines from half a block away and made a calculation in under 3 seconds. Old man, alone, no phone visible, military dog, retired, slow, nobody around. He was right about almost everything. He was wrong about one thing. He had not seen Sophia. They approached Walter from 2 sides, casual, like men who happened to be passing. Marcus crouched in front of Duke and looked at the dog with flat, empty eyes and said quietly, "Nice dog, old man. He bite?" Walter looked at him steadily. "If I tell him to." Marcus smiled. It did not reach his eyes. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice almost gentle. "You're going to give me your wallet and your watch and anything else in your pockets, and you and the dog are going to sit right there and not make a sound, and we're all going to go home tonight." Walter said nothing. His jaw tightened. Duke rose to his feet. The sound that came from the dog's chest was not a bark. It was something below a bark, something ancient and absolute, the sound of an animal that has been trained to mean it. Marcus flicked open the knife, and from behind him, a woman's voice said, clear and cold and completely without fear, "Step away from him right now." Marcus turned slowly. Sophia was standing 6 feet away, feet planted, keys still between her fingers, her eyes locked on his with an expression he had not encountered before on a civilian. No panic, no trembling, just a flat, focused calm that belonged in a different world than this sidewalk. He stared at her for a long moment, then he smiled. "Walk away, sweetheart." "I'm not going to do that," Sophia said. She looked past him briefly at Walter. The old man's eyes met hers, and in that single second, something passed between them that had nothing to do with words. She saw it immediately. The particular look of a veteran who has accepted that he may not survive something and has made his peace with it. She had seen that look in Kandahar. She had seen it on men half Walter's age in the last seconds before surgery when they gripped her hand and tried to be brave. She had promised herself every single time that she would not let it end there. Corporal James Whitfield, she hadn't reached him in time. PFC Andre Davis, she had been 10 seconds too slow. Sergeant Lisa Park, she had done everything right and it still hadn't been enough. Not tonight, not this man, not on her watch. "Sir," she said to Walter, keeping her eyes on Marcus, "what's your name?" The old man blinked, surprised by the question. "Walter," he said. "Walter, I'm Sophia. I'm a nurse at Brooke Army Medical Center. I served in Afghanistan, and I need you to trust me for the next 60 seconds. Can you do that?" Walter Gaines looked at her for a moment. Then something in his face shifted, the resignation giving way to something steadier. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I can do that." Marcus Vega stopped smiling. He had expected her to run. He had expected her to scream. He had not expected her to look at him like she had looked at worse things than him and survived every single one. He took one step toward her. and he raised the knife. Sophia moved left, not back, left. Army instinct. Never retreat straight back, you give them your spine. The first strike caught her along her right forearm, a long, shallow cut that burned like fire and told her exactly how sharp the blade was. She absorbed it and kept moving, putting herself between Marcus and Walter, spreading her arms wide. "Run, Walter, now!" Walter tried to stand, his knee buckled. He went down hard on the step and Duke lunged past him, all 90 pounds of trained military dog, driving straight for Marcus's knife hand, teeth closing on his wrist with a crack that made Dre flinch backward. Marcus screamed, slashed downward with his free hand and connected with Duke's shoulder. The dog yelped and released and staggered, and Walter cried out, a broken, desperate sound, reaching for Duke, and in that 1 second of chaos, Marcus turned back to Sophia, with his face changed completely, the coldness replaced by something uglier. He stabbed her once in the left side, then again, then a third time before she could cover. She felt each one. She had packed enough wounds to know exactly what was happening inside her body, which vessels, which tissue, what the warm spreading sensation meant. She knew it with clinical precision, and she felt it with the whole of herself, and she stayed on her feet through it through sheer force of will. She grabbed the pawn shop railing, did not fall. Marcus raised the knife again. A car came around the corner, headlights flooding the sidewalk. Then another, a voice shouting, footsteps running. Marcus grabbed Dre and they ran. Sophia held the railing with both hands. She could hear Walter behind her. Miss, stay with me, please stay with me." And Duke pressing his warm, heavy body against her legs as if he understood that his job right now was to hold her up. She looked down at the dog. His dark eyes were completely steady on hers. "Good boy," she whispered. Then her legs went and the sidewalk came up fast. The Army has a network that no civilian institution can replicate. It does not run through official channels. It does not require authorization or paperwork or a chain of command. It runs through the phones of people who served together, through group chats named after FOBs and deployments, through the instinct that never fully deactivates, the one that says, "One of ours is down." By midnight, the message had left San Antonio. By 2 a.m., it had reached Fort Hood, Fort Bliss, and Joint Base Lewis McChord. By 4 a.m., it had gone further, through veteran networks, through Army Nurse Corps alumni, through the quiet, vast community of people who had served and come home and never fully stopped watching for each other. A nurse, Afghanistan vet, took 3 stab wounds protecting a Marine and his service dog. She's in surgery at Brooke Army Medical Center. Her name is Sophia Reyes. At 5:30 a.m., the first vehicles appeared in the parking lot. By the time the sun rose over San Antonio, there were more than 200 of them. Active duty soldiers in uniform, veterans in leather jackets with unit patches worn down to whispers, Army nurses who had served beside Sophia and flown through the night to be here, a chaplain, 3 Medal of Honor recipients standing quietly against the wall inside the lobby, not announcing themselves, just present. Walter Gaines stood at the window on the 2nd floor, Duke pressed against his leg, both of them looking down at the parking lot. Walter had not slept, he had not eaten, he had not moved from this window in 3 hours. A young soldier came and stood beside him. Sergeant First Class, Air Assault Tab, the kind of young man Walter had once been. "Did you know her before tonight?" the soldier asked quietly. "No," Walter said. The soldier nodded slowly, looked down at the crowd below. "We all do now," he said. Walter pressed one hand flat against the glass. Duke whined softly. Outside, 200 people stood in the cold morning light and did not move. Sophia opened her eyes on the morning of the 2nd day. The first thing she saw was the ceiling. White. Familiar. She had looked up at this same ceiling from the other side 1,000 times, the nurse's side, the side that knew what every sound meant and what every number on the monitor meant, and what it meant when the breathing was like this and the lines were like that. Now she was the patient, and every number was hers. She turned her head. Her colleague and closest friend, Nurse Daniela Cruz, was sitting beside the bed with both hands wrapped around Sophia's hand, and her face carrying the particular expression of someone who has been terrified for 40 hours and is only now beginning to believe it might be over. "Hey," Sophia said. Her voice was almost nothing. Daniela made a sound that was not quite a word. Her eyes filled. "Don't," Sophia said softly. "You'll make me cry, and it'll hurt." Daniela laughed and cried at the same time. "You absolute nightmare of a person," she whispered. "I love you so much." Sophia turned toward the window. The parking lot was still full. She looked at them for a long time, the rows of people who had come through the night for a woman most of them had never met, and she felt something break open inside her chest. Not a wound, something older. The wall she had built after Whitfield, after Davis, after Park. The wall that said, "Do not let them in because losing them destroys you." It came down completely. Walter was in the chair by the door, Duke across his feet, both of them finally asleep. His face in sleep looked younger, less burdened, as if the vigil had cost him something and given him something back in equal measure. Sophia looked at him and thought of her father, Roberto Reyes, Staff Sergeant, 3rd Infantry Division. And for the first time in 16 years, she did not feel the grief before the love. She felt the love first. Sophia's recovery took 3 months, 2 surgeries, 6 weeks before she could walk a full corridor without stopping, 10 weeks before she could stand a full shift. She spent those months in a way she had never spent time before, receiving, letting people bring her food and sit with her and tell her she mattered. It was harder than she had expected. She was better at giving than taking. It took conscious effort to accept what people offered without immediately trying to give something back. But she learned. The veterans community raised $140,000 for her medical bills in 11 days. She tried to redirect half of it to a veteran mental health fund. They told her the fund was already covered and the money was hers. She sat with that for a long time. She went back to Brooke Army Medical Center on a Monday in March, and the floor lined up in the corridor the way floors do when someone comes home, and she stood at the nurse's station and looked at all of them and said the only true thing she had: "I don't know how to do this without you." Nobody said anything, but Daniela put her arm around her shoulders, and that was enough. She kept her journal. She kept the 3 names on the inside cover. She added a 4th line now, not a name, but a date. December 14th, East Commerce Street, Walter, Duke. The night she had finally stopped being 11 seconds too late. She spoke at a veterans fundraiser in April. She had never been comfortable with crowds or speeches. She stood at the podium and looked out at 400 faces and said, "I used to think courage was something you trained into yourself. I was wrong. Courage is just love that has run out of other options." The room was silent for a moment. Then it was not. She thought of her father the whole drive home. She thought he would have liked Walter. She thought he would have loved Duke. She thought he would have looked at her the way he always looked at her, with that quiet, complete certainty, and said, "That's my girl." Sophia Reyes did not become a hero on that sidewalk on East Commerce Street. She had been one for years. In Kandahar, in the trauma bay, in every night shift she showed up for when she didn't have to. The sidewalk just made it impossible to ignore. If this story reached something in you, like this video. Not because an algorithm needs it, because Sophia deserves to be seen. Share it with one person who needs to remember that good people still exist in this world, and they are standing right next to you. Subscribe to Silent Watch Stories, because we will never stop telling the truth about what human beings are capable of when they choose each other. Drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. Rate this story out of 10. And if you're a veteran reading this, or you love one, thank you. We see you. We are not leaving. Sophia Reyes did not step in front of that knife because she was trained to. She stepped in front of it because she had spent her entire life becoming someone who could not walk away from a person in danger. That is the first truth this story carries, that courage is not a single dramatic moment. It is the sum of every quiet choice a person makes long before the crisis arrives. Sophia had been building that moment for years, in every double shift, in every hand she held, in every name she wrote in her journal. The second truth is about grief. Sophia lost her father at 17. She lost 3 soldiers she could not save. She did not let that loss hollow her out. She let it direct her. She became a nurse because of absence, because of the people she could not reach in time. This is one of the most honest things a story can show, that the deepest wounds, when carried with intention, do not weaken a person. They become the reason the person shows up. The third truth belongs to Walter. He is not a broken man. He is not a charity case. He is a Marine who served 2 tours, who loved his wife for decades, who sits outside on her birthday because the apartment is too quiet. He is the veteran that most people walk past without seeing. This story asks every viewer to look closer, to notice the person sitting quietly on the steps before a crisis makes it impossible to ignore. The fourth truth is about community. 200 people in a parking lot at 5 in the morning, not organized by any institution, not required by any rule, just human beings choosing each other because one of their own was down. No government program built that, no policy created it. It was built by years of loyalty and shared sacrifice and the unspoken agreement that we do not leave each other behind. That agreement does not expire when the uniform comes off. The fifth and final truth is the simplest. The people we lose do not disappear. Corporal James Whitfield, PFC Andre Davis, Sergeant Lisa Park, 3 names on the inside cover of a journal. Sophia carried them into every room, every shift, every impossible moment. They were not a burden. They were the reason. And on a sidewalk in San Antonio on a cold December night, they were finally, completely honored.